The inheritance lawyer couldn't meet my eyes. His voice cracked as he read $3.2 million for Victoria, $5 million more in investments. And for me, Ava, a rotting farmhouse and $300 in cash. Ryan's hand slipped from mine. Outside rain hitting the pavement, like applause for my humiliation, he pressed the ring box into my palm. "I can't marry a failure," he muttered before his car disappeared into the night. I sat with those 3 bills in my hand, wondering how fast a life could collapse. By nightfall, I was in the farmhouse kitchen, the walls smelling of mold and memory. I thought I had lost everything until I noticed the scratches in the floor. They weren't random. They were arrows, and they all pointed to the refrigerator, and to something I was never supposed to find. The country club's library smelled of leather polish and dust, the kind of place where words were supposed to carry weight. But when the inheritance lawyer opened his briefcase, his hands trembled, as if the paper inside were hot coals. He cleared his throat, looking everywhere except at me. "To my daughter, Victoria Margaret Hartwell." He began, "I leave the penthouse apartment at 1500 North Lakeshore Drive, valued at approximately $3.2 million, and the investment portfolio currently valued at $5 million. There was a rustle of approval from the room, subdued but unmistakable. I heard someone whisper, as expected, like this was simply the natural order of things. Victoria leaned back in her chair, the corner of her mouth lifting in a smile too polished to be spontaneous. She reached for Ryan's hand across the table, but it was mine she should have been holding. He didn't pull away. Not yet. The lawyer went on. "To my daughter, Ava Rose Hartwell, I leave the family farmhouse in Millfield, Illinois, and the sum of $300 in cash." Silence. A silence so thick it pressed on my ears. Victoria broke it with a laugh, a sharp, almost musical sound. "300, is that all?" She looked at me as if I'd been handed a participation trophy at her coronation. "Maybe you could use it for gas money, Ava." Ryan shifted beside me. I felt the weight of his gaze before I turned. His jaw was set, his eyes darting toward the penthouse keys in Victoria's hand like magnets. "Ryan?" I whispered, desperate for him to meet my eyes to remind me I wasn't alone in this. He stood, too quickly. "We need to talk." He said, his voice low but cold. Outside, rain poured in sheets, blurring the parking lot lights into halos. He didn't even bother with an umbrella. He walked me to my rusting Civic like a man escorting a stranger. "I can't do this," he said, finally pulling the ring off my finger. The tiny diamond caught the light one last time before disappearing into the box. "I thought your family situation would provide stability. But this..." He gestured toward the club, toward Victoria's silhouette still visible through the window. "They saw what I see now. You'll never amount to her." His words cut deeper than the will had, deeper than Victoria's laugh. I opened my mouth to protest, but nothing came. He pressed the box into my hand like a debt paid. "I can't marry a failure." And with that, he left me standing in the rain as his BMW roared away. I sat in my car until the windows fogged the $300 damp in my fist. I counted it once, then again, as though miscounting might change the number. But it didn't. It never would. For years, I had been the other daughter, the shadow. Tonight had only made it official. Yet something in me refused to collapse. Maybe it was anger, or maybe just stubbornness. But as I gripped the damp bills tighter, I felt the first spark of something else, something dangerous. By the time I reached the farmhouse, night had fallen. Rain drummed against the broken shutters. The air smelled of rot and wet earth. I told myself I'd just stay the night, figure out what to do in the morning. But when I stepped into the kitchen, I froze. The linoleum was scarred with deep scratches like someone had dragged something heavy across it again and again. At first I thought it was damage, but as my eyes adjusted, I realized the marks weren't random. They formed lines, arrows, all pointing to the ancient refrigerator hulking in the corner. My heart kicked against my ribs. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination. But some part of me knew better. because even as the storm raged outside, I couldn't look away from those arrows carved into the floor. Arrows that seemed to be waiting for me to follow. The farmhouse hadn't been lived in for 15 years, and it made sure I felt every one of them. The front door resisted when I pushed its hinges, groaning like a warning. Inside, the air was thick with mold and old paper, the kind of smell that sticks to your skin. I dropped my bag on the counter, the sound echoing through the hollow rooms. Somewhere above me, water dripped steadily into a bucket I hadn't set. I should have left. Every part of me screamed that I didn't belong here. But where else was I supposed to go? The kitchen was worse than I remembered. Cabinets hung off their hinges, and the refrigerator hummed faintly, even though it hadn't been plugged in for years. I ran my fingers along the scratches in the floor, tracing the arrows again. My pulse quickened. Why arrows? Why here? I tried to shake it off, but the questions clung. I found a few old plates in the cabinet and tried to wash them, only to be met with brown water sputtering from the tap before running clear. I scrubbed until my hands stung, as if cleaning the dishes could somehow clean away the day. But grief has a way of seeping into your bones. I smashed the first plate before I even realized I'd thrown it. The crash rang through the empty house, startling me, and then something inside me snapped. I hurled another and another, each shatter louder than the last. The shards scattered across the floor like sharp punctuation to years of swallowed words. Why her? Why not me? My voice cracked against the silence. Why am I never enough? When the last plate was gone, I slid down against the counter, breathing hard, my throat raw. Rain tapped through a leak in the ceiling, cold drops landing on my face. It felt like the house itself was crying with me, or maybe mocking me. That was when I noticed it again, the refrigerator. I don't know if it was the angle of the light or the exhaustion clouding my mind, but the arrows seemed to glow. The scratches weren't random damage. They were deliberate, carved into the floorboards. I stood legs shaky and gripped the refrigerator door. The metal was ice cold, and when I pulled, it groaned like something resisting its fate. Inch by inch, I dragged it away from the wall, the floor shrieking beneath it. Dust billowed, stinging my nose. And then I saw it. A brass handle embedded in the floor. Polished, smooth by hands I didn't know hidden beneath decades of neglect. My breath caught. My mother's voice whispered in memory. Your grandmother saw the world differently. Ava. She'd never said more, shutting down any questions. But now staring at the handle, I wondered if different had been her way of saying secret. I knelt, brushing the grime away. My fingers trembled as they curled around the handle. I pulled, expecting resistance, but it clicked open too easily, like it had been waiting. The wood lifted, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. A rush of cold air swept up, cool and clean, nothing like the damp rot above. It smelled almost sterile. My skin prickled. Every horror movie I'd ever seen screamed not to go down. But what did I have left to lose? My family was gone, my fiancé had abandoned me, and I was standing in the ruins of the only thing I'd been given. I set my phone's flashlight and took the first step. The wood didn't creak. Another step and another, until the kitchen disappeared above me. The air grew colder, quieter, as if I'd crossed into a space the farmhouse had been guarding for decades. At the bottom, I reached for a switch on the wall. My fingers brushed it, and the basement flooded with light. I blinked my breath, catching. This wasn't a basement. This was something else. White walls, climate control, rows of carefully constructed storage racks, and on them dozens of canvases wrapped in protective coverings, preserved as though someone had been waiting for me to find them. The farmhouse had given me $300 and a room full of ghosts. But standing in that impossible vault, I felt the first pulse of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. And yet, in the back of my mind, another thought whispered, sharper, colder. If this had been hidden from me all my life, then someone had made sure I'd never find it. The light flickered once before steadying, humming faintly against the concrete walls. I stood frozen, my phone forgotten in my hand, the beam of its flashlight pale compared to the fluorescent glow now bathing the room. It didn't feel like a basement. It felt like a museum. Rows of racks stretched before me, each slot cradling a canvas wrapped in protective cloth. The air was cool, dry humming, with a quiet that didn't belong to a farmhouse rotting above. Whoever built this hadn't just hidden a room, they had preserved it. I reached for the nearest painting, my fingers brushing away the thin layer of dust. The cloth peeled back with a sigh, and I nearly dropped it. The prairie. Golden fields bending beneath a cobalt sky. Brushstrokes so alive I swore I could feel the wind tugging at my hair. In the bottom corner, the signature Eleanor Hartwell, 1962, my grandmother. My chest tightened. She'd been nothing more than a ghost story in our family, the eccentric artist who wasted her life on canvases no one wanted. My mother rarely spoke of her, and when she did, it was with a bitter finality. Your grandmother saw the world differently. Ava, don't dwell on it. But here she was, alive through color and canvas, her vision blazing from strokes of paint that had survived decades. I pulled out another, a portrait. The girl's eyes caught me first, green, unflinching. My eyes, my chin, my face painted decades before I'd been born. The signature, again, Eleanor Hartwell, 1958. A chill raced through me, one canvas after another, each more breathtaking than the last, landscapes that swallowed me whole, portraits that seemed to breathe. Every piece screamed genius, the kind of genius the art world would kill for. And according to every family story, these works had all burned in a studio fire in 1977, which meant someone had lied. I staggered back, clutching the edge of a rack. My head spun. I remembered the textbooks and college references to Eleanor Hartwell as a promising mid-century painter whose career had been cut short by tragedy. Auction records of sketches selling for millions, historians calling her the American Cassandra of the prairie. I whispered it aloud, though there was no one to hear. These are worth hundreds of millions. The room tilted. For a moment, I thought I might faint. My phone buzzed violently in my hand, dragging me back. A text from Victoria. Have you called Marcus Stone yet? He's ready to buy that dump. $60,000 generous for what it's worth. Don't waste time, Ava. I looked around at the vault, at the canvases stacked in neat rows at the preservation systems, quietly thrumming to life. 60,000. The anger hit so hard I doubled over, a sound tearing from my throat I didn't recognize. My sister wanted to bury this, to bulldoze the house, to salt the earth over a legacy that had survived betrayal and time itself. Why the answer rose unbidden? Because she knew. The thought lodged deep. If Victoria knew about these paintings, she would never let them go. She would do anything to keep them under her control or destroy them if she couldn't. I shoved my phone back into my pocket. My pulse hammered so loudly it drowned the hum of the lights. I turned, slowly taking in the room again, and that's when I noticed the second door. It was painted the same sterile white as the walls, so subtle I would have missed it if not for the faint seam where the frame met concrete. My fingers trembled as I reached for the handle. The door swung inward and cold air spilled out. Inside was a studio, an active one. Easels still stood with brushes laid neatly across trays, palettes smeared with hardened color canvases stacked against the walls. The air smelled faintly of turpentine and oil paint. And the paintings, dozens of them but not signed Eleanor. These bore another name, Margaret Hartwell. My mother. I sank to the floor, my hands shaking. Every canvas was of me. As a child, as a teenager, as an adult, me teaching art to children, me painting alone, me laughing, me crying. A lifetime cataloged in strokes of paint I'd never seen her make. The woman who told me art was impractical, who pushed me to find something useful, who never once picked up a brush in my presence. She had been painting me all along. In the center of the room, on the main easel, sat a single envelope with my name scrawled across it in my mother's familiar hand. I opened it with fingers that felt foreign. My darling Ava, it began. If you're reading this, you've found what Victoria must never have. She got what she values: money, power, status. You get what I know, you'll treasure truth. Your grandmother wasn't crazy. She was betrayed. The paintings everyone thinks burned were saved. I spent my life preserving them. But I also discovered something else. Your father and Victoria have been stealing from this estate for years, selling off pieces they claimed were destroyed, hiding the money offshore. If you're reading this, it means they succeeded in silencing me. But they failed in the one thing that matters. They didn't find this. The farmhouse is yours. The will is ironclad. Don't trust anyone, Ava. Victoria will come for it if she learns. She is more like your father than I ever wanted to admit. The $300 was no insult. It was symbolic. It's what Eleanor paid for this farmhouse in 1950. The true inheritance is here. You are the artist. You are the truth keeper. You are the one I trust with everything that matters. All my love, Mom. The letter slipped from my fingers, the words burned into me. Murder, betrayal, stolen fortune. My throat closed and I laughed, then sobbed, then laughed again until it echoed against the concrete. The farmhouse hadn't let go of me. It had dragged me back, chained me to its secrets. And for the first time in my life, I understood why. Because this wasn't just an inheritance. It was a battlefield. And Victoria had no idea what was waiting for her. By the time I climbed back upstairs, the storm had dulled to a steady drizzle. But my nerves hadn't. Every creak of the farmhouse felt amplified, like the house itself was listening, waiting for me to decide what came next. My phone vibrated again. Victoria. Ava, her voice came slick through the line, honeyed but sharp. You must be exhausted after today. Why don't we be practical? Marcus Stone can meet you tomorrow. He's prepared to offer $60,000 for the farmhouse, which is more than generous. It's falling apart, sweetheart. Take the money. Start fresh. I swallowed, forcing my voice steady. I'm still cleaning. It'll take time. A beat of silence, then the smile in her voice cracked. Don't play games with me. This isn't something you can handle on your own. The call ended before I could respond. I dropped the phone on the counter, my palms damp. She knew. Maybe not everything, not yet, but enough to be circling like a hawk. I wasn't ready to face her alone. So I reached out to the one person I thought might understand. Dr. Sarah Mills, my old art history professor. I sent her photos, just 3. A prairie landscape, the portrait that looked like me, and one of my mother's hidden canvases. Within minutes, she called. Her voice trembled with excitement. Ava, do you understand what you have? Museums have been searching for these for decades. Each one could fetch millions. But listen to me carefully. Don't tell anyone else. Not Victoria. Not anyone. I don't think I have that choice, I whispered. Then we'll make one, she said. I'll drive down tonight. The farmhouse ticked like a clock as I waited. The rain stopped and silence pressed in, broken only by the occasional groan of wood. I tried to eat, but every sound of fork against plate made me flinch. At midnight, headlights carved through the dark. Sarah stepped in, carrying a bag of equipment, her eyes wide the moment she saw the basement. My God, she breathed, running her fingers along a canvas. They're real, untouched. Do you know what this means? Victoria will come for them, I said flatly. Sarah glanced at me, serious now. Then we need protection. These paintings aren't just valuable, they're evidence. Proof your family has been lying, stealing. Maybe worse. Her words barely settled when another knock rattled the door. It wasn't Sarah this time. Marcus Stone stood in the doorway, tailored suit, immaculate despite the mud-silver hair catching the porch light. He didn't wait to be invited in. Miss Hartwell, he said, stepping into the ruined living room with the air of someone inspecting property, already his. Your sister tells me you'll be signing tomorrow. I thought we'd expedite matters. I haven't agreed to anything. He smirked, sliding a folder across the counter. Victoria already signed preliminary agreements. The deal is happening. You can accept $60,000 or we'll do this the hard way. Sarah appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. She can't sell what she doesn't own, Mr. Stone. The will is clear. The farmhouse belongs to Ava. His eyes flicked to Sarah with disdain. And you are Dr. Mills. Art history. I advise on historical properties. Historical. He laughed sharp and humorless. This is a teardown. 48 hours, Miss Hartwell. After that, I file for immediate possession. I suggest you pack quickly." When he left, the night seemed colder. Sarah paced, muttering, "He's bluffing, but Victoria isn't. We need more than authentication. We need law on our side." That was when another call came. Mr. Whitmore, the family lawyer. His voice strained. "Ava, meet me at the Millfield Diner. Don't come to my office alone." The diner smelled of burnt coffee and fried onions. Whitmore looked 20 years older than he had that afternoon. His tie was loose, his eyes red-rimmed. "I've carried this guilt too long," he said without preamble. "Your mother came to me before she died. She wanted to change the will, leave everything to you. She knew what your father and Victoria were planning. Threats were made. She gave me this instead." He slid a flash drive across the table. My fingers closed around it like it was burning. "What's on it?" "Recordings. Financial records. Proof of what they did to Eleanor. Proof of what they did to your mother." His voice cracked. "I couldn't protect her. Maybe I can protect you." Back at the farmhouse, Sarah and I huddled around my laptop as the files opened. My father's voice came first cold and calculated Margaret's becoming a problem. She found the offshore accounts, then Victoria's sharp and certain, "Then we deal with her like we dealt with Eleanor. Doctors can be bought. Accidents can happen." The recording ended, but its echo sat in my chest like lead. Sarah's hand covered mine. "Ava, this isn't just about art anymore. It's murder." My pulse pounded so loudly I almost didn't hear the next sound, the crunch of gravel outside. Headlights washed across the broken window. I froze. Sarah whispered, "Who is that?" A shadow crossed the porch. A knock thundered against the door. The farmhouse was no longer just holding secrets. It was daring me to open them, and the clock had started ticking. The knock rattled the door a second time, harder this time, followed by a voice I knew too well. "Ava, it's Ryan. Open up, please." Sarah tensed beside me. I felt the blood drain from my face. Ryan, the man who had shoved my engagement ring back into my hand only hours earlier, was suddenly at my door in the middle of the night. I cracked the door, leaving the chain in place. Rain slicked his hair, his sweatshirt clinging damply to his shoulders. He looked rehearsed, almost like he'd been waiting for this role. "I just want to talk," he said softly. "I made a mistake earlier. I was angry. I shouldn't have walked away." Behind me, Sarah's voice cut sharp. "Ava, don't," but I needed to hear it. Needed to know why he'd come back. "You chose Victoria," I said flatly. He winced, glancing at the shadows behind me. "She told me you weren't safe here, that you might hurt yourself." I wanted to check. My stomach clenched. Her words through his mouth. Ryan leaned closer to the gap. "Have you even been downstairs? Old houses like this usually have basements, storm shelters, root cellars." My chest went cold. His eyes flicked past me to the refrigerator, and that was when I knew. He wasn't here for me. He was here for what lay beneath. "You should go," I said, forcing steel into my voice. His smile twitched. He pulled something from his pocket, fumbling as if adjusting his phone. But I caught it, tiny, black, and blinking. A listening device. I slammed the door. The chain rattled, but it held. Through the wood, his voice dropped the mask. "You're making a mistake, Ava. You have no idea what's at stake." His footsteps retreated into the night. When I turned, Sarah already had her phone to her ear. Within an hour, 2 headlights swept the drive again. This time, it was James Rothschild, the collector Sarah trusted, and with him a man with graying hair and a detective's eyes. Thomas Mitchell, former FBI. Thomas spoke first, his voice gravel. "You've got yourself a storm here, Miss Hart. Paintings, money laundering, and now recordings of murder. We need to get ahead of this before your sister makes another move." James stepped into the basement, his breath catching as if he'd stumbled into a cathedral. 40 years I've been chasing Eleanor's ghost," he whispered, brushing a trembling hand across a canvas. "And here she is. My God." He turned to me with tears shining in his eyes. "Ava, these aren't just paintings. They're proof. They were declared destroyed. If your sister has been selling them, she's committed fraud on a scale that could topple senators. Senators." My mind leapt to Victoria's fiancé, the Blackwood name whispered in law circles like it belonged to royalty. Thomas set up cameras in the corners of the kitchen and basement, his movements efficient, practiced. If she comes sniffing around again, we'll have her on tape. But you need to be careful. Cornered animals bite hardest. That night, the house didn't feel abandoned. With Sarah cataloging James, photographing, and Thomas wiring hidden mics, it felt like a war room. But under it all, the farmhouse groaned, as if warning us, too many secrets, too many lies. Near dawn, Whitmore called again, his voice ragged. "Ava, I found something else. Medical records. Your mother was tested before she died, arsenic exposure. Not enough to kill quickly, but enough to mimic mental illness. Just like your grandmother." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, nausea rolling through me. They'd been poisoning her, to silence her, to make her look unstable. Thomas listened grimly as I relayed it. "Fits the pattern. Falsified psych records, attempts to have you committed. They're recycling the same tactics." Sarah murmured, history repeating itself. "Unless we stop it." The weight of generations pressed against my chest. I looked at the canvases surrounding us, the faces of women painted by women who'd been erased, betrayed, buried under lies. Eleanor, my mother, now me. I clenched my fists. Then we bait her. We give Victoria exactly what she wants, a chance to silence me, and we'll catch her doing it. Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous, necessary," I said. James exhaled slowly. "What's your plan?" "We set it in motion that afternoon." Sarah leaked a carefully worded tip to an art blogger. Rumors suggest a discovery of lost Eleanor Hartwell paintings in rural Illinois. Nothing specific, just enough to stir the waters. By evening, Victoria's number lit up my phone 10 times. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked through the farmhouse, the cameras blinking faintly in the corners, every creak of the floorboards recorded. My nerves were strung tight, but beneath it all was a strange calm. Because for the first time, I wasn't just reacting. I was fighting back. At midnight, Thomas tapped the screen of his monitor. A car had pulled up the dirt road. Black SUV, tinted windows. "She's here," he said. The headlights cut across the walls, slicing the room into light and shadow. I heard the slam of a door, the crunch of heels against gravel. Then her voice, muffled but unmistakable. "Ava opened the door. Let's talk like sisters." I glanced at the hidden camera, then at Sarah, who gave me the smallest nod. I opened the door. Victoria stood there, immaculate as ever, her hair sleek, her eyes burning. She smiled, but it didn't touch her face. "You've caused a lot of noise," she said, stepping inside uninvited. "People are asking questions, dangerous questions. You should have taken Marcus's offer." "I'm not selling," I said. Her eyes flicked past me to the refrigerator, to the scratches in the floor. I see she murmured, voice like a blade. "Then you found it." I swallowed heat rushing through me. Every instinct screamed to deny it, but I held her gaze. "Maybe I have, maybe I haven't." Her smile sharpened. "Doesn't matter. You'll hand it over, one way or another." The silence stretched. The cameras caught it all, the threat, the menace under every polished syllable. And I knew then the farmhouse wasn't just holding paintings. It was holding the truth that could destroy her. The clock ticked louder in my head. 48 hours. That's what Marcus had given me. But standing in that kitchen, face to face with Victoria, I realized I didn't need that long. Because tomorrow, the world would know. The morning broke gray and heavy clouds sagging low over the prairie, as if even the sky knew something was about to split open. By 10 o'clock, news vans lined the dirt road, their satellite dishes tilting like vultures. Word had spread fast, too fast. Sarah's leak had grown teeth overnight. Victoria arrived not long after black SUVs rolling up the drive like a convoy. She stepped out in heels unsuited for gravel, her Chanel suit pressed to perfection, her expression carved into something almost saintly. Cameras swarmed. My poor sister, she began voice-pitched for the microphones. She's been struggling since our parents' passing. Our family has a history of instability. I'm here today to help her do the right thing. Her words tasted like poison. I stepped onto the porch before she could spin further. My pulse thudded in my ears, but my voice carried clear and sharp. Instability. That's rich, coming from the woman who's been selling paintings she swore were destroyed. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victoria's smile faltered for the first time. "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped. "Don't I said, lifting my phone. "Because I've got the recordings. Every deal, every lie, and every word you spoke about cutting brake lines." The murmurs became a roar. Cameras leaned closer, microphones thrust forward. That was when Agent Walsh stepped out from the throng, her FBI badge catching the light. Behind her, a team of agents moved toward the porch with crisp precision. Victoria Hartwell Walsh announced, her voice steady as, "Stone, you are under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, and suspicion of murder in the deaths of Harold and Margaret Hartwell." For a heartbeat, Victoria just stood there, frozen. Then her mask cracked. "You can't prove anything," she shouted, her voice climbing higher, jagged. "She's the crazy one, just like Eleanor, just like our mother." The cameras caught every word, every frantic flicker of her eyes. And then I played the recording on speaker, her voice cold and deliberate. "Then we deal with her like we dealt with Eleanor. Accidents happen." Reporters surged forward, shouting questions. Victoria's face drained of color. "Fabricated," she screamed. "She doctored it, she enough," Agent Walsh cut in. The agents closed in steel cuffs, flashing, but Victoria wasn't finished. Her voice twisted into a snarl as they pulled her hands behind her back. "You think you've won, Ava. You think the world will remember you for this. You'll be alone, always alone, because no one loves a failure." I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "I don't need your love. I have the truth, and that's more than you've ever had." The agents led her down the steps, cameras flashing so fast the world stuttered in bursts of light. Senator Blackwood tried to push through the crowd, his voice booming about setups and conspiracies, but Walsh's team had a warrant for him too. His roar cut off as agents closed in the spectacle, exploding across every news feed before lunch. By the afternoon, the farmhouse wasn't just a ruin. It was a crime scene, a news stage, and the birthplace of a reckoning long overdue. I stood in the doorway, the $300 bills still tucked in my pocket, watching the storm I hadn't started, but had finally survived. For the first time in my life, Victoria's shadow wasn't over me. The farmhouse had given me nothing but mold and rot until it gave me everything, and I wasn't done yet, because truth, once unearthed, doesn't go back underground. In the weeks that followed, lawyers and curators came and went, each one leaving with questions heavier than the ones before. Auctions were arranged, statements drafted, deals brokered. The world wanted Eleanor Hartwell's genius back, and they were willing to pay for it. But I didn't keep the millions, not most of them. I kept 5 paintings, the prairie storm that smelled like rain even on a clear day, the portrait of the girl who looked like me decades before I was born, and 3 of my mother's canvases, her secret love letters, each brushstroke whispering, "I saw you. I loved you." The rest went to museums, to history, to the world. The farmhouse itself I restored. Its basement became a gallery, its barn artist studios. And in the foyer, framed behind glass, hangs my true inheritance, $300 faded and fragile. Visitors always ask why I didn't sell it, why I preserved worthless bills. I tell them the truth. Because sometimes the smallest inheritance carries the greatest weight. Because love and truth, once uncovered, are worth more than all the penthouses in Chicago. Victoria inherited greed. I inherited truth. And that has made all the difference. If you followed Ava's journey this far, I want to hear from you. Would you choose millions built on lies or a legacy built on truth? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories where family secrets twist into something no one saw coming.